Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Kathy Ohman from Forward, a group that's seeking to build affordable housing in Dennis for people with autism. And we want to update the community on this project because a lot has happened since we last spoke about it. Kathy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for being here. First, let's give our listeners an overview of what Forward is and what this project is. This is an acronym for Friends or Relatives with Autism and Related Disorders. Tell us about Forward.
That's right. Our mission is to build a small-scale model housing community for adults with autism and related developmental disabilities. Our goal is to develop a community of peers, a place where people can prosper in a supportive environment. These are people who need traditional group home services. They need to live in a house that is supervised by trained professionals. And Forward will help develop the training and education for employees who work there, too.
And you have personal experience with autism in your family. That's how you got involved in all this.
My husband, John, and I have 3 sons, and our 2 youngest children have autism. Autism is a spectrum disorder, and people have varying degrees of challenges with this disorder. Some are higher functioning than others. It's a long spectrum. And our youngest son, for example, moved to a group home in Hyannis about 5 months ago and goes to a day program and then is supported in his group home. Our middle son is 24 and getting a bachelor's degree at UMass Amherst. He has worked hard through, started at Cape Cod Community College and moved on to UMass and developed his own major in equine and canine massage therapy that he'll be getting a bachelor's degree in May.
So fascinating there. And the last time we spoke, I think it was just before a town meeting vote on whether to grant a town-owned parcel of land for the Forward project. That's
right. Last October, we went to Dennis Town Meeting and asked the voters to allow the selectmen to put out a request for proposals for a 4.9-acre parcel of land in Dennis. We were overwhelmingly successful. The vote at town meeting that night was 213 to 6. And since then, we submitted we partnered with Housing Assistant Corporation, which is so significant. They have been an incredible organization to partner with and work with on this affordable housing effort. And we applied for the lease of the land, and in late August, the selectmen unanimously voted to give HAC and Forward the lease, the long-term lease, and we're also applying for community preservation funds in Dennis, which will come up at this town meeting on October 27th. We've met with the Community Preservation Committee several times and with our Selectmen and Finance Committee, and all of them have unanimously supported the community preservation article at town meeting on October 27th. So we'll be there to get voters to vote in support of that as well.
Just taking a little tiny step back to let our listeners know where this parcel of land is, what's been there in the past.
The land is on Holcomb Rock Road, which runs in between Old Bass River and Route 134. It's a couple of miles from the exit 9 on Route 6. It's a vacant parcel. It's actually a larger 15-acre parcel of land that is abutted by a town sand pit as well as another sand pit and Holcomb Rock Road. It's in back of Holcomb Rock, and our application to community preservation is called Forward at the Rock. So it's 5 acres behind the rock that have never been developed.
And I'm sure finding this parcel, that was a major piece of the puzzle for this project, I would think. That was huge.
Yes, it was. The town of Dennis has been incredibly generous to us and committed to building affordable housing for this population. They see a real need for this. Our town leaders, our town manager, town planner, and our town engineer helped us locate this parcel and work with the town to make make this happen as far as we've come with this.
You've decided to lease the land rather than purchasing it, and I assume that's because you're a small organization. You're really an organization that's come together to solve this problem.
We're small, and again, HAC has been an incredible partner for us and resource, and I think it's good for the town to hold on to this land. It's their land, and it also allows us to continue to work with the town. We anticipate working with them on design and hopefully walking trails and other community related design to this.
When
project.
we think about the design of this project, what are we talking about here exactly? How far have you gotten into the design element?
As part of our application, we put together a development team. We have an engineer, an architect, and an attorney, and it will be a small community. We are in phase 1 building of this 5-acre property are planning a duplex, which would have each two homes with 4 bedrooms each, for a total of 8 people.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Kathy Ohman from Forward. We're talking about this project to build a special housing community for adults with autism. Now, Kathy, what are the challenges in designing this type of housing? This is a very specific use for this housing. These are people that might have different needs from your typical apartment building.
Right. We'll obviously, or we definitely will provide handicapped accessibility, although people with autism do not necessarily have physical disabilities. Some may, and we assume that people will age in place at Forward, that this will be their home and they will live there for much of their lives. And so as we all get older, there'll be a need for handicapped access, we assume. Each of the bedrooms will have their own bathroom, and we envision that there'll be sort of studios with a counter space and an additional sink and a microwave refrigerator. So the ability for people to be on their, have privacy in their room, but there'll also be common living areas, a common kitchen, dining. Eventually, in a phase 2 part of the building, we would like to build a community room that would allow Friday night dances or cooking classes or family meals, holiday parties, things like that.
And the reason why this type of housing is so important, I would think, family members of people with autism, there's always going to be the continual concern of how will my loved one be cared for in the future, because they might not be able to always live at home.
That's right. And as parents age and their adult children with developmental disabilities are living home, that becomes a looming issue. But beyond that, we're trying to develop a community of peers for people and to look at how people with developmental disabilities find their community. It's difficult for people with communication difficulties, which lots of people with autism have, to make friends, to find activities, to develop their own schedule. We're hoping with Forward that this is that we develop our own community and be very, very involved with the outside community. And a community building would allow the community to come in. Walking trails would allow others to come in. It would allow interaction between people at Forward and people at the community. We know that people living in group homes have day programs out in the community. Some of them are vocational programs, and we would anticipate that people living at Forward would have that kind of situation as well.
And there are a few different agencies on the Cape that help people with different developmental abilities to find jobs and work in different things. I'm sure you're in touch with many of them.
Right. And we would our goal would be to contract with an agency to provide the group home services. And again, we would hopefully have people who are the residents would also be involved in day programs and go out into the world and come home at night like many of us do. and develop other interests in the community as well. Holcomb Rock Road is close to beautiful Dennis Village. The Dennis Memorial Library is there. In Dennis, our senior center up the street is being looked at as a future community center for the town, which would be a wonderful resource if that comes together in the future. So we feel like we're at the crossroads of it's a great location to do many things in Dennis and the rest of Cape Cod.
And you talked about Community Preservation Act funds, and we know that that comes from a surtax on people's property taxes. Mm-hmm. Those funds are specifically to be used for affordable housing, recreation, open space, historic preservation. But affordable housing is a big piece of that.
Yes, and community building. That's where we come into play with the community preservation.
That's where this would fall in, and you'll put in an application, or have you already done that to the Community Preservation Committee? Right,
we have, and they're supporting our application, and we are looking to be funded at this upcoming town meeting on October 27th. Tuesday, October 27th is Dennis special town meeting, and Community Preservation has 4 articles on the warrant, I believe, and we are one of them. So we hope Dennis voters will come and support our article, just like they did last year.
And if you do get the support, which you got last year around this time, when do you think shovels might hit the ground on this? I know there's a lot of pieces of the process.
Right. And that's exactly it. We talk about trains going out of the station. We'll be sitting down soon with the town and with HAC and developing timelines for fundraising, most importantly. And I think we're looking at spending a good year of fundraising and putting all the development pieces together before the shovel goes in the ground.
How much money do you need to raise for this?
This phase of the project is estimated at $1.76 million. There's no infrastructure on the property. We need to bring everything in.
It's a challenging project to raise that money.
Right.
I'm sure you have a lot of plans for different fundraisers, and one that's coming up
That's right.
soon.
And we are having a trivia night, our second trivia night on Friday, October 30th at the Seaview in Dennisport. It's a fabulous place for this trivia night with our DJ, Patrick Tracy. And we are having teams of 4. It's a $200 donation for a team, but we have a first cash prize of $500, and there's a second and third prize as well. We'll have trivia, great food. We're having a silent auction for everyone looking for Christmas presents or holiday presents, and it's from 6 to 9 on Friday, October 30th at the Seaview.
And I'm curious, since you've announced this project, and it's been, I think, a couple of years that you've been talking about it, and I'm wondering how many people you've heard from who are interested, because I'm sure there is a great need for this in this region.
I think there is a great need of people, young adults turning 22 who are looking for residential supports after they leave school, older people, as we mentioned, whose parents are getting unable to take care of them or getting to a point where that will happen in the future. There's also aging housing for people in residential facilities. It's been about 45 years since we opened the doors of the state institutions, and the first group homes that were developed are now getting old and need rehab. So this will be a new, hopefully state-of-the-art facility when it's finished and could meet some of those needs as well.
Do you expect there'll be a lottery, or how will people apply to be in there? Because, again, I'm sure the need is greater than the number of units, where you'll have 8 or so units.
We anticipate that there'll be an application process. And, again, we would like to contract with a provider agency to provide the group home services that we would anticipate working with that group to develop the application and criteria for people. As we mentioned before, autism is a wide and long spectrum, and there are people, many different kinds of folks who could be eligible to live it forward.
And I want to talk about that aspect of it a little bit. You mentioned that this wide spectrum of autism for some of our listeners and we're all still really learning about this disease. And so tell me what you've learned in looking into it, some of the surprising things.
Well, my husband and I often say, we have two sons who grew up in the same room. They shared the same bedroom, went to the same schools, had many of the same services. And our younger son has severe communication difficulties and anxiety. Anxiety is a hallmark of autism, and clearly an inability to care for himself. And then our middle son has sort of broken through some of the barriers of communication and anxiety with autism, and is getting a bachelor's degree, and has challenges, but is also a good self-advocate. And we think he'll find his way with supports and help, but he's well on his way to that. For the higher functioning people, what we're seeing is that they may have good training and education and are intelligent, certainly, but have trouble getting jobs, keeping jobs, dealing with their anxiety at jobs, and communicating effectively with their coworkers. And so there's a whole world of people who need assistance with that. In a second phase of building for the remaining property, we are really looking at, with our town leaders, people who don't need as many supports around the clock, but would have trouble living on their own and need something to bridge their situation.
In the final minute or so we have left, what are some of the questions you've been hearing from people in the community? It sounds like from last year's vote, people have been quite supportive. Of course, the town has been very supportive. What are some of the questions people have about this project that you'd like to get out there?
Well, I think, and you're right, the town of Dennis, when we run into people, they are like, when are you going to build this? When is this going to get going? Because people, I think, perceive a real need for this. And, all of our children were raised in public education for the most part these days. So people are familiar with them and they see the need. And I think there probably are questions out there about how does this affect the neighborhood? Who are these people? Will there be calls in the middle of the night to the EMTs or, lots of reasonable questions. And we anticipate working in the Holcomb Rock Road community and, inviting neighbors in to see who we are and what we're doing and to try to develop a real sense of community for these folks.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. I've been talking to Kathy Ohman from Forward about the project to build an affordable housing in Dennis for people with autism. Thank you so much, Kathy, for being back here with me today.
Thank you, Laura.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.